All right, let's get started. Thank you all for coming out to see the talk today about our stem cell clinical trial here at Valley. My name is Reza Asanian. I work in the Rehab Research Center. These slides... all right, there's like 4 people here, so. So just as a disclosure, these slides were borrowed from a presentation by Dr. Lewis. I can't ever say her last name. I always say Jane. Levkowski, there you go. She presented at ISSCR, and all the information that's on my slides is public information, so you guys can talk to whoever you want about it. I'm going to give you guys a lot of data. I'm going to give you a little bit of basic science, but I thought before we get started on any of that, I give you a little bit about the purpose and the meaning of our work. So I'm going to play a little video, and we'll watch that, and then we'll get started with some of the talk.
From the field to the weight room, Jake Javier is used to spending a lot of time working out. But now, instead of building his body for football, the former San Ramon Valley High School team captain is relearning how to move his body after breaking his neck in a diving accident at a swim party on the last day of school.
Every day gets easier, every day I get more energy. Everyone stays in the chair longer because that's one of those energy draining things is sitting upright.
Dr. James Crew oversees the rehabilitation program at Santa Clara Valley Medical Center.
Jake's case is paralysis of his hands, partial paralysis of his upper arms, and full paralysis of his lower body, including paralysis in several organ systems, including the lungs, the bowels, and the bladder. Just going to review that.
More than 4 weeks have passed since the star football player was airlifted to John Muir on the eve of his high school graduation.
Jake sustained
This x-ray shows the severity of the injury.
The C5 and C6 space was injured. He had what we call a subluxation, where the spine shifts due to severe damage to the ligaments.
Jake's mother says she arrived at the hospital frantic, not knowing what to expect. But just before he was wheeled into surgery, she got a chance to talk to her son.
And when he saw me, he started to cry, and he said, "Mom, I messed up. I messed up so bad." And I said, "What do you mean, son?" And he said, "I promised you I'd never make you cry, and I'm making you cry now."
Do you think he is fully, accepting of the fact now that he will never walk again?
You know, Julie, I really believe he accepted that. They don't worry. I really do.
Doctors realigned Jake's spine using 2 metal rods and 8 screws. They say that will relieve the pressure on his badly damaged spinal cord. But a new battle was just beginning.
I got pneumonia, my lungs collapsed, and so for a while I was on a ventilator, helping me breathe. So I couldn't breathe on my own. It was just really difficult all the time. It was really drew a lot of energy out of me, just trying to focus on my breathing. Yep.
The same focus, internal drive, and determination that helped Jake succeed on the football field is now helping him fight the infections that invade his body. He's now off the feeding tube, breathing on his own, and moving around in his electric wheelchair for several hours a day.
Nice. I do weight shifts every once in a while. Get the pressure off my lower back.
How often do you do it?
Every hour.
For how long?
At least a minute.
And in the past couple of weeks, Jake has started to show improvement in his upper body strength, gaining some movement in different parts of his arms.
The important one to add back is the wrist, because that's how I'm able to grab things. So, moving forward, I'm going to learn how to live my life just flexing my wrist, and it brings my finger and thumb together.
He hasn't cried since. He hasn't complained since. He hasn't said, why me? He hasn't acted sad. He's just been very stoic and focused, like the athlete that he is, absolutely focused on what needs to be done next.
Some of the best advice I've gotten is you have good days and you have bad days. And you just got to take it as it is and just move forward.
The Javieres know Jake has a long road ahead, but they say the overwhelming show of support from family, friends, the community, and even people who have never met Jake has been incredibly uplifting. And surprise visits from people such as former 49er great Ronnie Lott, Raiders quarterback Derek Carr, and Raiders running back Roy Helo Jr. have meant the world to Jake, along with a very special visit from Cal Poly football coach Jim Kraft. Kraft recruited Jake, and Jake was excited to begin playing football for him this fall.
It's kind of crazy. I mean, the number of people that have been coming up to people that I know and asking about me. And I mean, I went through my phone earlier and getting texts from people I don't know and looking on social media and stuff and all the support. It's pretty crazy.
How does that make you feel? Does that, I mean, I know it's frustrating and what you're going through is so hard, and does that help you?
Yeah, definitely helps. Know people are looking out for me and praying for me.
And Jake says he's grateful to his family, especially his mom and dad, who are constantly at his side.
It makes a huge difference having someone in the room with me and just always there to help out if I need anything. They've been amazing to me the whole time, always eager to help me with anything I need. So I'm just very thankful for my parents and family.
So that was Jake Javier, and he has a GoFundMe page, and he's on Facebook. And if you look on Facebook, you'll see that he's continued to go on to Cal Poly. He's going to become a biomedical engineer. He's interested in stem cell research. He just got a grant for $10,000 to do research. He's reached out to our lab to talk about potential things he can do. So his life has opened a new chapter. He's not playing football at Cal Poly, but now he's going to become a biomedical engineer and try to help spinal cord injury patients. So Jake's story is a typical story. He had a traumatic event that caused him a cervical injury. Like many of you know, the typical workup after that is stabilization and decompression.
Can you speak up just a little
Oh,
bit?
sure, yeah. All right.
Or maybe even
Can you guys hear me? No?
not
Yeah.
quite, you might need to go on the mic.
Hello. Okay. So, whoa, all right. Yeah, okay. So I'm going to talk a little bit about basic science, and we'll kind of step through some of the early results that the series was called Geron, that Geron presented. So trauma to the spinal cord causes something called hemorrhagic necrosis, and the secondary damage that happens after spinal cord injury involves cell death, formation of a cavity later on, and demyelination and scarring. As the lesion ages, there is formation of scar because fibrotic tissue comes in and forms. Throughout all this, there's a typical white matter rim that's preserved, and that white matter rim is neurons, myelinated or demyelinating neurons that have been partially demyelinated. So the initial thought was to inject oligodendrocyte precursor cells into the spinal cord, and these cells will help remyelinate the existing neurons, the neurons that have survived. That would help the connections that are still there act better. And there's been a lot of basic science research to show that injection of oligodendrocytes would help the improvement process, not just by them remyelinating, but by the other factors that they put out. Oligodendrocytes put out over 250 different factors that help with inflammation, that help with revascularization, and I'll show you some basic animal data to show you that. But what Asterias has done, and before it was, the company was formerly known as Geron, and they had a different designation for it. It was GRN OPC1 instead of AST OPC1. These are all cryopreserved embryonic stem cells that were pushed along the progenitor pathway to become precursor to oligodendrocytes. It's to keep in mind the thing that Asterias has done. They've done a lot of preclinical work to make sure that these vials are ready to go. So once we pass phase 3 clinical trials, the hope is just to take one of these vials they have and spin it down, prep them, and send them anywhere in the, I would say world, but in the country to use as a treatment. And they're standardizing across several different sites, and I'll show you that. So, yes, ma'am.
You can have your peanut gallery here.
Yeah, of course.
Could you say a little bit about where the cells came from? Because people really want to know where they, in the sense that they were from couples that had extra embryo.
Oh, yeah. So this is part of, so back when...
Can you repeat the question?
Sure.
Thank you.
Ms. Bergens asked if I could expand upon where the stem cells come from, where they originated from. So when George Bush #2 designated to the NIH a set of cell lines that could be used for stem cell research, this is one of those, I think, 7 or 8 that were used. And where those stem cells came from were when people do IVF, when they can't have children and they try to artificially inseminate and have kids then, what physicians usually do is they inseminate a lot of eggs. So you can't implant all the fertilized eggs that you use. So instead of throwing them away, they decided, these couples, to donate these to research. Does that answer the question? Okay. So what they did is a lot of preclinical trials to see what happens when you do inject stem cells in an injured spinal cord. And they showed that, like I said in the original slide that I was talking to you about, they remyelinate, but other things they do is they stimulate existing neurons to grow. So the factors they send out, the spared neurons that haven't gone through apoptosis, they're stimulated to grow and hopefully cause new connections. And they also cause new vessels to form. In the thoracic spinal cord injury model, they showed that the stem cells fill in the cavity, the syrinx that forms, and they stay viable. So with that data, they went ahead and they did the first in-human stem cell trial here at Valley. We were part of a big consortium of research centers to try to see if there was any harm. And they started with a very, very low dose. They started with 2 million cells. And they wanted to make sure that the stem cells don't cause any tumors or cancers. So this phase 1 clinical trial had nothing to do with efficacy. They just wanted to make sure it was safe. And they started in the thoracic spinal cord because if the cells migrated or if a tumor did form, they wanted to make sure it wasn't in a high-valued area like the cervical spine. You could imagine that if the stem cells did migrate or a tumor formed higher up, you'd lose hand function, a lot of bad things would happen. But luckily, 5 years post, all the patients have tolerated the study well, and they have 5 years of data. I'm not going to get too much into this because I want to get to the new trial. So what we're doing here now is we're doing the second stage of the study. We're doing cervical spinal cord, and the thought of that is they've initially shown that the cells were safe, and now they want to show where they can inject the cells, where we'd have the highest yield for the risk. And if we get a couple levels back in a cervical injured patient, they regain hand function. And if you have 2 levels of improvement, so if you go from, let's say, a C4 to a C6 or a C5 to a C7, that clinical improvement leads to a large quality of life improvement. So although there was no expectation that anyone would get up and walk, there was hope that bladder and bowel care would come back, and there was also hope that some hand function would return. So the objectives of the trial were to establish safety. Again, this is an early trial. So foremost, it was a dose escalation trial to make sure that there were no detrimental effects. I talked to you originally about starting in the thoracic spinal cord. When they went up to the cervical spinal cord, they also did, they started with 2 million, then went to 5 million, to 10 million, and now at our 20 million dose. And I'll show you all that too. And the main outcome measure is to assess upper extremity motor strength and function. So we do a grasp study and we do a INSCI. And I can talk to everyone about what that means at the end. There are additional neurological measures that we use that I won't get into that aren't important. The really exciting thing is we're part of a really dedicated team across the country, where Valley and Stanford are part of a lot of centers there who you'll recognize are also SCI model system centers. And the dedication of all the different centers has been remarkable. I've seen people work super hard to get to where we're at now. And where we're at now is we're at cohort 5. So we started at cohort 1 with patients who were Asia A. We injected 2 million cells. There were 3 subjects. They went to the FDA. They got clearance to go to the next phase, cohort 2, which were 10 million cells. There were 6 subjects in that. We cleared that in August of 2017. We went to cohort 3 and cohort 4, where we're injecting 20 million cells in Asia A's. Jake was in the 20 million cohort. And then Asia B's, where we injected 10 million, and now there's only 2 spots left in the 5th cohort where we're injecting 20 million cells. Valley has the honor to be the site to do the first Asia A 20 million cell patient and the first Asia B 20 million cell patients. And also we were the first to do we were the first center to do a C4. And one of the biggest reasons is the great team we have here in the Rehab Research Center, and also the great people we have at Valley. So, you know, there's context to be put here. We're a county hospital. We're not an academic center. Our main mission is to deliver quality care to patients, and everyone who participates in the study is doing extra work. So our lab techs down in our lab are doing their work, plus they're just they're volunteering their time above and beyond what they typically do to help us run the samples. And when we go to the MRI, they're staying later to help us out. And our team here, Dr. Kwok, Dr. Ali, Jody Moole, Kathleen, Sarah, Sam is no longer with us. She's working to get into med school, and Zev, who's our finance person, all stay really late and work really hard because they believe in the purpose and the meaning of our work. And because of all that hard work, we were able, originally the study was only open to C5 and to C7, but the safety data we showed allowed us to expand the window of patients we can include. So now we can also include C4 patients. And we're also able to expand the window. All those different cohorts led the FDA to this in animal studies, but I'm not going to talk about the animal studies. But all that data allowed us to extend the window and extend the amount of people we include in the study. So the injection procedure. A lot of people ask me about the injection procedure, and I'll get into that. But as a caveat, the real work, I think, starts after you inject the patient, because there is a very lengthy follow-up. There's a commitment from the patients to be in the study for 15 years. So I think the patients are really like pioneers and astronauts doing this, because a 15-year commitment is a very, very large commitment. And you have to come in the beginning, the first year, every month, and then every 3 months. So, and a lot of patients, people who have SCI injuries, understand the difficulty of traveling long distances. And many of our patients are 2, sometimes 6 hours away from us. There was one patient that traveled from the East Coast to see us. Having said that, the surgery is a resurgery. They go in through the old scar. Usually there's been a laminectomy done, so they don't have to take any bone off. There's a large device that, oh, cool. There's a large device that's set up that's tethered to the table that guides a needle that goes into the spinal cord itself, and we watch it with, this is Dr. Steinberg, Dr. Lee. Dr. Steinberg is the chair of neurosurgery at Stanford. Dr. Lee is the chair of neurosurgery here at Santa Clara Valley Medical Center. And they use a microscope to watch the needle go on the dura. They pierce the dura and they inject the cells into the spinal cord. Luckily, to this point, there have been no intraoperative complications, which is a good thing. Got another video. People in the lab joke around that, you know, I play a lot of videos. Yeah. So this will, the first video was a little about the injury and Jake. This video talks a little bit about the procedure and what we do. I'm going to turn the mic off.
This is the day the Javier family has been hoping and praying for.
Definitely a huge opportunity, great blessing we've gotten.
It's cutting edge, it's new technology, you know, there's no guarantees with anything, but it brings hope.
After undergoing and passing a long list of strict medical tests, the San Ramon Valley High School football star qualified to take part in an innovative stem cell clinical trial.
We gave him the option to do this. It was he's 18, his body, his future, his decision, his situation. And he indicated that that's what he wanted, so we're supporting him 100%.
Jake is about to become only the 5th person in the world to receive 10 million stem cells. Only patients with the most severe spinal cord injuries, such as Jake, who have little or no feeling or movement from the chest down, are considered for the experimental procedure. And it must be done within 30 days of the injury. Doctors also say the fact that Jake is young, as well as mentally and physically strong, make him an excellent candidate.
I know there's no guarantee and there's risks associated with it. For you, what are you hoping to gain out of this therapy?
I mean, full recovery is not realistic, but something that would be great is to get to my hands back, being able to flex my fingers and whatnot so I can use my hands fully. That would be a lot easier.
Something amazing to think that he is the 5th person in the world to receive 10 million cells directly into his spinal cord is surreal. And to be given this gift is thanks to the millions of prayers that everyone around our community, outside our community, and around the world, from what I understand, that has been praying for Jake. So we're ecstatic because we know it is part of God's plan.
Dr. Gary Steinberg of Stanford University is one of the neurosurgeons leading the team that's about to perform the delicate operation at Santa Clara Valley Medical Center.
You look pretty relaxed.
Yeah.
Good. We're set to go. We'll leave a few hours from now, and we'll take you back over to the OR.
Dr. Steinberg started working on stem cell transplants more than 15 years ago. He says adult stem cells that were injected directly into the brains of chronic stroke patients are showing remarkable results.
These are patients who we felt would never recover. We thought their circuits were dead, but we found out that they're not dead, that they can be resurrected.
A Fremont company called Asterias is taking part in a spinal cord study that Jake is part of. Here, researchers are taking living stem cells and engineering them to act like nerve cells, with the hope they will enhance recovery and nurture the damaged area of Jake's spinal cord.
We're literally programming human stem cells to help patients with a specific disease or injury, and then delivering those cells directly to the source of the problem.
Researchers say they want the stem cells to help reestablish the connection of signals from Jake's brain to other parts of his body.
What we hope here is that we'll see improvement in the upper extremity functioning, his arms, so his elbows, his wrists, his hands. That would be a huge benefit for Jake.
During the procedure, the medical team must carefully open the lining of Jake's spinal cord.
We have a very sophisticated system where we mount it on top of Jake. It's a frame that allows us to load a very fine needle containing the stem cells.
Once they pinpoint the injury, they will inject the cells.
In a sense, what we think we're doing in a simple sense is to turn the adult spinal cord, which does not recover very well after an injury, into a neonatal or infant spinal cord, which recovers much better after this kind of an injury. If the clinical studies confirm what we found in the preclinical animal studies, this would totally revolutionize the treatment of patients with severe spinal cord injury.
It cannot be understated what a game changer this would be if it works. And that's the big.
When do you expect to see some difference? How long? Is it a week out? Is it 3 months out? Is it 6 months? What do you anticipate?
So you're already taking the most difficult situation and you're trying new technology on that. So, you know, we don't expect to see anything before 6 months to a year. If indeed we see anything.
For Jake, it's a possible chance to make a difference. Not just for himself, but for thousands of other people with spinal cord injuries.
I mean, it's so exciting. It's all new stuff. Just being a part of something so innovative and so new is pretty exciting to see how it works out.
So now I'm going to show you some of the results we have. Dr. Lee was really tempered in what he thought would happen, the results we would get. But before we get into the results, a really big thing to keep in mind is we've broken the threshold of proving that you can do stem cell research in spinal cord injury. There was a time then there was a really big barrier to doing this. The safety concerns.
Sorry about the line.
No problem. Some of the logistical concerns, and frankly, some of the political concerns of using stem cells in spinal cord injury. So, we've gone over that threshold, and we've given people hope. I was talking to Jake's mom today on the phone, and he hasn't made some of the gains that some of the other patients have, and all this is on his Facebook page. You can like Google him and see this. But the thing she said is the study has given him hope. Every day he thinks that, I did something that, I was brave enough to do something that nobody else did, and I've given information to move the field forward. So now, after having said that, let's give you guys some hard data.
Dr. Connie, just a little bit more mic.
Yeah, sorry, yeah, okay. Nobody's ever accused me of being soft-spoken, so this is a first. I like it. This is great. So the problem with a trial like this is no one will really volunteer for you to take them to the OR, cut onto their spine, and not do anything. So what they've done is they've gone into a database, it's the EMSI database, and they've tried to match patients to the patients they're using in the trial as controls. So that's their control group. So this isn't a randomized control trial, this is a dose escalation trial. And what they found when they looked at the first cohort, the 2 million cell cohort, when they matched those to the patients they got in the database, if you look here, the ends for the database are obviously a lot more because they can mine the database to find equivalent patients. And the ends for that cohort 1 are only 3 because they only had 3 patients. So if you see this at 3, 6, 9, and 12-month follow-up, you see that there is no difference. And that's kind of expected because in the animal studies, they didn't think there'd be any efficacy at 2 million cells because of what they saw in the animal studies. But they wanted to start with a low dose one to establish safety again in the cervical spinal cord. And it kind of acts as a control as well. The exciting thing is when they presented this, we all were really, really excited, is that when you look at the matched controls to the 10 million cell cohort, and these are Asia A's, and we can later on, a lot of the people with spinal cord injury know this, Asia A's are the worst kind of injury, and we've gone to Asia B's, which are, the connections are a little bit more preserved, that's why they're called Asia B's. There's Asia C's and Asia D's, but we won't get into that. When we look at Asia A's at the 10 million cohort, you see that those patients are doing better. And not only statistically do they do better, but if you look online, there are some patients that respond much better than other patients. And what we're doing is we're gathering a lot of different markers. We take a lot of blood from the patients. They joke around and call one of our research assistants a vampire, because we draw so much blood and we take cerebral spinal fluid, and we're banking a lot of information to try to really figure out why some patients respond really well and some patients don't respond really well. Because spinal cord injury is a heterogeneous disease, and if we find out why some patients are better responders to others, we could adjust the dosage. We can tell patients that maybe wouldn't benefit from a surgery in the stem cells not to do it when this becomes clinically viable, if it becomes clinically viable. The thing to really keep in mind is that the percentage of patients that are improving by more than 2 motor levels, when I talked to you guys in the beginning, if you improve by 2 motor levels, it makes a big quality of life, are much higher than the standard patient that doesn't get anything. So if you look here at 12 months out, a standard patient from 8 to 12 months, standard patients get 29% of the standard patients get 2 motor levels back. That database also, the mining of the database where they found that, agrees with other established results in the literature. But the patients in the trial are getting, at 6 months, 33% compared to 18, and close to 15%, 50% of them are getting 2 motor levels back. Again, there's a wide range. There's a wide range, and like I said in the beginning, we need to figure out why some people are responders and some aren't. So I think I've driven this point home. So the improved arm and hand function is going to give people a greater independence and self-care as far as cathing and wheelchair mobility, transports and transfers, and just normal ADLs and quality of life. Another exciting thing is it's safe. When we look at the imaging data, there's no signs of tumor or cancer formation. There's no loss in function. Everyone's gained or stayed at the same function. We have immunosuppression regime that we use to account for the allogenicity of the foreign cells being in a person's body. No one's had negative reactions to that. So the primary goal, the goal to show that this procedure is safe, has been pretty much met to this point.
Doctor, are those patients on immunosuppressors for life now, or?
No, that's a good question. They're on immunosuppression for 60 days, and that toward the tail end of it, toward the last 30 days, we taper it down. And the immunosuppression is much, much lower than a solid organ transplant. So if you know somebody with a heart transplant or a kidney transplant or any other kind of transplant, the amount of immunosuppression drugs they take are much higher, and you know, they take it for much longer. So, so we see that all subjects in both the cohorts showed, in the higher cell dose cohorts, the 10 million cells, showed improvement. Some improved better than others. And it was meaningful improvement, so it was 2 motor levels. It wasn't a couple of points on the ASIA score. And the really exciting thing is that they're going to be releasing data regarding the Asia B 20 million cell cohort soon. And if you just Google online and look at I can't tell you who the patients are or what to look for, but if you just Google the study and Google results, people post a lot of videos and pictures of what's happening, and there's some really exciting results. There's a lot of people that are working on the trial. I said in the beginning, the participants are the people who are taking the most risk, and you know, it takes a lot to be in a stem cell trial. It takes a lot to be in any kind of trial. So I really commend the people who are doing this really for the good of society. Dr. McKenna and Dr. Steinberg are the co-PIs of the study, and there are a lot of late nights that they put in on this. And there's a lot of late nights, like I said, our study team has put on this. I wanted to also introduce you to new lab members in our lab. Ben Drelikoff is the new interim director, and he's the clinical manager. He's helping out with a lot of the stats and keeping everybody in line. And we have a new biomedical engineer, Michael, and he is helping out with the trial and a lot of different things hopefully we'll do in the future with exoskeletons and biomedical devices. This is actually VMC had, I don't remember what it was, and what was it that they were taking pictures of right outside the cafeteria?
Oh, yeah, it was a foundation.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Right. So, yeah, it was thank you. So I got to put on cool glasses, so, yeah. No, this was sober, unfortunately. We have no excuse, so, yeah. All right, well, thank you for your time, and if you guys have any questions, I'm going to stick around a little bit. Otherwise, I think the pizza's here, and it's getting cold, so why don't we... Oh, yes, I forgot. Sorry. I'm going to introduce Franklin and Nick to you guys. They're going to talk about a... Oh, I'm gonna run their video first. Yeah. Right. So this.
As far as questions for your.
Yeah.
For your thing, all the patients said there's one more that's almost completely subscribed and enrolled. Are there other places besides this talk that these results have been reported or will be?
These results have been reported at a couple of different like scientific meetings. I don't know if they do public like talks, but everything's on their website. Everything's online, and nothing I gave you tonight.
Asterias website.
It's all
Yeah.
Asterias website.
Right. Right. And nothing is proprietary that I've shown you tonight.
They'll be updating that periodically, I presume?
Yeah, hopefully they're, well, when we close the last cohort, the 5th cohort, that means we've pretty much closed out the study. We've recruited Asia A's and Asia B's, and we've recruited up to the max dose. And I'm hoping that they'll give some results to us investigators, because we really don't know what's going on at the other sites. We just know the patients we've enrolled. We've been lucky enough to be one of the leading sites. We've enrolled 6 patients, which might not seem like a lot, but if you talk to the team, it's a lot of work, so it's a lot of patients. So we know what's going on with the 6 patients we've enrolled here, but there's a lot more than 6 patients enrolled in the study.
When do you think this will be available for to be able to exercise it and use it for regular people?
Yeah, so this is a...
You can repeat the question.
Oh, sorry. The question was, when is this going to be available to the public? So there were a couple of emails that went out that talked about the different phases of a clinical trial, and we're not even at phase 3 of a clinical trial. We're still 1A, 2A. And what that means is the real goal of the study is still to establish safety. It's not even to establish efficacy. A secondary goal was to establish efficacy. So it's still a while. It's still a ways away. They need to do a phase 3 clinical trial, and after that, there could be thoughts of releasing it. The thing I would encourage, and this is why I'm excited about people like Nick and Franklin and the peer support network, is you need to have voices in government, local, and national saying that this kind of research is important to you, if it is important to you. And without advocacy by patients, none of this is going to happen. No matter what kind of results we put up, if people decide that this isn't worth it anymore, it'll stop. And unfortunately, research like this is very, very, very expensive to do. It takes a lot of resources to implement a clinical trial, but it takes even, I think, an order of magnitude more to do a stem cell trial. So to answer your question, it just depends on how loud the patients' voices are on how important they think this kind of research is. Because the more funding anything has, the faster things move, just like everything else in life.
Teresa, can you just talk briefly about any other avenues of research for spinal cord injury? Because there's quite a few other exciting things going on there.
Yeah, so there is a lot of research going on. Just across the country, there's hypoxia research going on. There's research going on with exoskeletons. For anyone who's really interested to see what kind of research is out there, I encourage you to go to clinicaltrials.gov. put in spinal cord injury, and you'll see all the research that is going on nationally and internationally and what the recruitment criteria is. Better yet, I would go talk to your primary care physician or your PM&R physician or the person who's gauging how appropriate it is for you to enter into a clinical trial. And the only person who can really do that is the physician that's treating you day by day. So let's put on this video.
I have another question.
Yeah, absolutely.
Is there any hope in the future to be able to apply stem cell treatment to people who are post-injury, or is this only going to be available to somebody who is recently injured?
Yeah, that's a great question. There was another, the question was, are stem cells only going to be available for people with acute injuries, or are they also going to be available for people with chronic injuries? So there was a clinical trial going on by another stem cell company that was focusing on chronic patients. So the hope is to someday treat chronic patients as well, because getting somebody within that window, that 42-day window, is difficult. So there is hope to help treat chronic patients. But one of the issues, I'm going to be a downer, is like I talked to you in the beginning, and I didn't get really deep into this, is with chronic patients, there's a problem of fibrotic tissue formation. So that's going to be a heavier weight to lift to try to fix that. But you know, that's why we do research, and that's why we're doing what we're doing, to hopefully apply it. But initially, it's going to be for acute patients.
Can I just suggest that we take a quick break and grab some pizza, because I'm really hungry and I don't want to be back here by myself.
Yeah, I'm gonna run the video. While the video is running, maybe everyone can grab pizza and look at